Putin bad news. What Putin's war is doing to Russia at home. He has been back in Russia for months, but the explosions, violence, and terror he experienced on the front lines in Ukraine have followed him. Their voices reverberate in his mind. The horrors that Private Alexander Teplukov has witnessed and inflicted on others are more than any man should have to bear. The 52-year-old suffers from memory holes, or periods where he is suddenly thrown back into the war zone in Avdiivka, Donetsk, eastern Ukraine. As the events of the scene play out before him, a flood of feelings returns. His unit must flee. His partner is shot. They are digging. Flames erupt. They flee once more. He's trapped. For Teplukov, this is torture, he says to the Daily Beast. 2 separate times while riding public transportation, each episode lasted 2 to 3 minutes. He got up to find everyone staring at him. When the nightmare finally ended, he said, "I had no idea where I was or what I had done during the flashbacks." No matter what you think of the soldiers who have been conscripted or brainwashed into fighting in President Vladimir Putin's war against Ukraine, the war does not end when they return home. While recovering from his wounds in February, Teplukov traveled 1,282 miles east of Moscow to his hometown of Kurgan. "My limbs are a little wonky, but I can get around okay. But I haven't fully recovered psychologically yet, and my young son sees me fighting with his mom," he said. "My blood pressure regularly exceeds 200, I have severe hypertension, and I have nightly crises that no sleeping pills can alleviate. When I told a psychologist how I was feeling, she said she was sorry but could not help me." Teplukov, who served a lengthy sentence for robbery and other offenses before the war, can relate to the reports of other former Ukrainian soldiers committing what he calls crazy crimes. These accounts of violence translated from the battlefield to domestic life strike a chord with him. Independent psychologists disagree with the Russian Health Ministry's estimate that up to 11% of Russian soldiers suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. A psychiatrist in Moscow named Olga Shelkova told the Daily Beast, "Absolutely every soldier who comes back from the front has some form of PTSD, that is inevitable. But of course not every one of them takes a weapon to shoot people in the mall. The military's mental health care system is so closed and so classified that nobody really understands how the treatment works for soldiers with PTSD," according to a report. On August 7, Private Ildar Bulatov, 39, who authorities had condemned as a deserter, armed himself with hand grenades and took hostages at a gas station in the city of Ufa, 800 miles east of Moscow. The former service member threatened to detonate a bomb at a gas station unless the criminal case against him for deserting his Ukrainian military unit was dropped. More than 500 cases of conscientious objectors and deserters have been investigated in Russia since Putin launched the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Bulatov had volunteered to go to Ukraine, much like Teplukov had stolen his wife's fur coat to buy a ticket to join the war. Bulatov was not ready for a possible death, Sergeant Renat Kultumanov reportedly told a local media outlet, explaining why he deserted the front. "The guy felt it was unfair, how the authorities treated him," Teplukov said of Bulatov, "plus he did not want to go to their doctor, so they packed him up and locked him up in some mental institution." Teplukov, who was heavily tattooed, had first-hand experience with Russian prison life. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu boasted in June that over 150,000 Russians had signed the most recent recruitment contracts, just days before Putin's soldier Yevgeny Prigozhin turned against him in a coup attempt. According to Olga Romanova, director of the prisoner rights organization Russia Behind Bars, so far several thousand ex-prisoners, out of more than 50,000 Prigozhin said he recruited to Wagner's meat grinder battles, have returned home. Large numbers of ex-convicts have perished in the battlefield after being dragged from the harsh prison system and placed directly into frontline battles, where they are treated as little more than cannon fodder by Russian generals or Wagner commanders. Those who make it through are left horribly traumatized. After returning to civilian life, several of them have already been accused of horrific crimes. During an 8-day visit to his family in the Kirov region, Ivan Rosomachin, then 28 and serving a 14-year sentence for murder, was allegedly accused of murder and arrested by local authorities. The villagers claimed they had seen him stagger around town brandishing a pitchfork and an axe while yelling insane threats like, "I'll kill everyone. I'll sever an entire clan." He allegedly killed a woman, and no one was able to stop him. After serving his time in a Ukrainian war prison, another convicted killer who was released to go fight has been arrested in connection with the murder of 6 civilians. Igor Sofonov, age 37, was apparently granted early release from prison so that he could join Storm Z, the government-supported military equivalent of the Wagner ex-con brigades. 2 buildings in the Derevanoy village were discovered on fire, containing 6 people who may have been his victims. Teplukov claims he has not been paid for his service in Ukraine, and Romanova and her prisoner rights organization have been trying to help him. She said, "There is no doubt that 100% of all these soldiers, ex-prisoners, have bad forms of PTSD. Many of them use drugs. Many of them drink a lot of alcohol. Nobody provides any psychiatric help for them, and there is a big chance that many of them will commit more crimes or die upon their return from overdose of alcohol." As most military contracts have not yet expired, PTSD issues will become a major issue, a much bigger problem, according to Valentina Mazlykova, a co-founder of the Union of the Committees of Soldiers' Mothers. So far, only Wagner soldiers and wounded men have returned to us after their contracts have ended.